Some of the largest influencers in both social media and print media today, and has been very influential in causing a huge resurgence in general aviation and bringing on a whole new generation of pilots into general aviation. Louder on the mic, please. And here's some of those main influencers here today to talk to you about all things STOL. So today we're going to talk about, in addition to backcountry flying, 3 different forms of STOL, short takeoff or landing competitions that are found around the country today, with an emphasis on safety, training, and proficiency. I want to give a special thanks to Lisa DeFries right here from Flying Magazine for helping us get this audio visual together for us today. And now I'm going to introduce my good friend Kevin Quinn from Truckee, California, one of the main instigators and influencers of all things STOL.
Thank you, Juan. And you guys can hear me back there? Yeah? This is an incredible panel. These guys, I want to be like these guys. They're legends in every one of these guys' seats. And the idea behind this really for all things STOL, I don't care whether you fly at your home airport and landing off the airport on the asphalt, if you go into the backcountry, or you come and join competitions, be it national, STOL drag, Arc and STOL, it doesn't matter. Training is a big, big aspect to that. And my mission, literally my mission, is to get pilots feeling that they understand the idea, the difference between training for proficiency. There's a big difference between being current and proficient. Currency being 3 landings and takeoff in 90 days. Proficiency being you need to go fly, you need to be able to understand what that aircraft does, and you need to be able to fly it just like you can tie your own shoes through muscle memory. And that's really what the basis of this entire discussion is. Training for proficiency, flying your aircraft. I can give you a stat just real quick, and I want to introduce each and every one of these guys. But in the last months alone, June and July, there's been over 20 plus incidents in the Idaho backcountry. Talking to the folks at Airframes Alaska, there's been all kinds of accidents all summer, and it really boils down to the lack of proficiency. If you're comfortable being current and loading up your family to go fly for the $100 hamburger at the asphalt restaurant that you're going to, the asphalt runway, if you're comfortable loading your family up and going camping, or entering a competition here without being proficient, I challenge you to just stay home. You have to be proficient. We're going to get into that with these folks. And the idea with this, when we introduce these guys, we're going to talk for about a half an hour or so. And I really want to go to you guys and answer some questions, get some content from you, because your thoughts and what is wondering about what's going on in the world of STOL, off-airport backcountry flying, is important to us, and I think we can answer a bunch of those questions. But first and foremost, Richard, where's Richard McSpadden? I would like to introduce my buddy Richard McSpadden from AOPA. Richard, tell us just a little bit about yourself, buddy.
Hi, I'm Richard McSpadden. I run the Air Safety Institute at AOPA, and I've flown in some STOL events with the Navion I used to own, which was a ton of fun. Surprised people you put that in a STOL event, but it does surprisingly well. And also I own and fly a Super Cub in the backcountry, and I've done some STOL events in that. AOPA is happy to be here because of what Juan mentioned. STOL is inviting all kinds of new people into general aviation, and we think that's great for general aviation. And we want to also be here to help make it safe, because AOPA has always been about that. Protect and grow general aviation and help keep it safe. And that's got our interest in STOL.
Thanks, Richard. Up next is Mark Patey from Best Tugs. Mark, give us a little spiel.
I'm the younger of the two of us. This poor old man right here, he's doing okay. Don't worry about him, he'll be all right. But I run Best Aviation Products, and we manufacture Best Tugs and Best Power Supplies and now Best Scrubbers, and we intend to keep being creative and developing new products for make all your lives easier and better in aviation. But my favorite part of aviation, despite all the facets we play in, is definitely the backcountry. It's a cub out in the dirt. That's where I find my joy. So,
thank you, Mark. Austin Clemens, our young gun.
Austin Clemens, and I'm 19 years old. And I do the 3 STOL competitions here: Arc and STOL, STOL Drag, and National STOL. And that's all I do. I love flying and beating up the pattern.
Very good. Doug Johnson, National STOL.
Jackson.
Jackson.
Hi, I'm Doug Jackson. I founded National STOL. We founded this more to try to get people involved in having fun at the airplane besides just getting on the pavement and going getting a hamburger, you know, and it developed into what we have now, which is a national series. We love it, but at heart, I'm still just a pilot. I like going camping in the backcountry just like everybody else does.
How about Mr. Mike Patey here? Anybody know this gentleman?
Thank you. Mike Patey, I love to build wild and crazy flying machines, and we got a few done and a few more to go. Oddly enough, my love of STOL and backcountry flying and the machines I built created a business all the way around it. I do rapid prototype development for the U.S. Air Force and military, and it's been really exciting. I've done the last 2 years, I've really sucked up a lot of time building things for the U.S. Air Force, and I love it. And but my heart lies in the backcountry, in STOL flying, STOL drag championships and tournaments, and the planes that get us there. So I'm going to keep trying to create wild and new ways to play in the backcountry.
Thanks, Mike.
Milne C.C. Pocock, Bush Air, backcountry instructor pilot.
I'm C.C. Pocock, and for the past 20 years I've been specializing in backcountry, mountain, STOL, and tailwheel training. And my three basic objectives that I want to achieve on every course that I offer, all the training that I give, is to make all pilots safer, more proficient, confident, and skilled. I'm based in Southern Nevada. That's where I operate from. And what else do I want to?
Well, I can tell you if you're wanting to get into the backcountry, go see CC
First.
Go see CC.
because he's one of the best. John Young, Arkansas.
All right, thanks. John Young from Arkansas. We're kind of a newcomer to this a little bit. You know, the traditional STOL's been around for a long time. STOL drag you've been developing for a lot of years. Arkansas came on board about 3 years ago, and we have been just absolutely amazed at the ground support and the swell and the volunteers that come out and the pilots that come out to do STOL. But more than that, we're really excited about the people that come out to watch us. We take that as a responsibility, you know, because our belief is that this flying can be done and done professionally. If you do it professionally, you do it safely. And that's our goal. So we go far beyond the competition itself, and we're just glad to be up here with these guys, and let's get this thing done and get people out there and doing it well.
Very good. And finally, Steve Henry, Race 44, the incredible Yeehaw series of aircraft. You can see him perform out here tonight at the Twilight Fest.
We are partnering with great companies like Dynon Avionics at Dynon.com, Airtech Coatings at AirTechCoatings.com, AviNation Youth Magazine at AviNationUSA.com, the Aviators Clinic at AviatorsClinic.com. Take a moment to go visit their websites at the links found below in the description of this video. And visit our website at experimentalaircraftchannel.com for events, our video library arranged in easy-to-find playlists on specific topics, affiliate products, aviation merchandise, and so much more.
I'm Steve Henry from Idaho. I have Wild West aircraft. I've been flying the Highlanders for a long time. We've been selling them for just aircraft for quite a few years. So I'm into airplanes that way. I'm building my 8th one right now of my own personal one. So I do a lot of that, but I love backcountry flying. I've raced something my whole life. So when this whole STOL thing started happening, I was all over that. And unlike Austin, I do all 3 of them too. The traditional STOL, the National STOL series, I go to all those, and every STOL drag race that's happened, I think I've been in, usually do pretty good. I just have a lot of fun with it, and I like the excitement, but man, I like to be safe. There's things I'll do one day I won't do the next because it just doesn't feel right that day. So. And I get nervous up here in front of you guys too, in case you can't tell.
Very good. Now we're going to turn it over to safety. We've had some incidents lately, and as we bring a whole new generation of young pilots into the program and into general aviation, we continue to have these recurring accidents. So talking about safety, proficiency, currency, Kevin?
Well, I think, that's a really good point. And these guys, I really want to get them talking. Safety is a big thing. Proficiency is a common theme here. I'll be a broken record throughout this. Safety, safety, safety. But what is safety? Safety is really professionalism. They both go hand in hand. They're symbiotic. If you act like a professional, realistically, you're probably going to be safe. Safety is professional. It's cool to be safe. It's cool to train. And when we train with our type of flying and the power and energy management skills, the altitude and directional control skills, the spot landings, and most importantly, the psychological aspect, because there's so much in the world that's going on with the psychological aspect, whether you're at your home airport and there's a crowd watching you fly off, the competition, backcountry, everybody's got an iPhone. Come on in there, you can do it, Kevin. And Kevin's thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can, but your buddy's coaching you into it. The mentality that goes behind that, the competition, when we're flying in front of a crowd, everybody's watching, we're racing or flying against the legends down here with the Pateys, Steve Henry, the young phenom Austin, CC flying his 170, and he's coming in and all of a sudden beats all of them. Now you're a new guy that comes in on a brand new Carbon Cup with 50 hours and thinking you want to beat these guys, but the psychological aspect is a big part. And so safety is so important, but ultimately it comes back to training for proficiency. And Juan,
I want to ask Cece right here. Cece, what would you say is some of the biggest issues you see with new pilots just breaking into this slow flying, backcountry type of flying?
You could be a fresh pilot, a private pilot with a fresh check ride, or you could be an airline pilot with 20,000 hours. It makes no difference. STOL competition flying, we're talking about STOL competition flying now in particular? Okay.
Well, backcountry and slow flying in general.
Well, there's a difference between backcountry STOL and competition STOL, but just generally talking about the extreme STOL, let's use the word extreme STOL. It doesn't matter who you are, how much experience you think you have, how current you think you are, what segment or section of aviation you specialize in. STOL is a whole different ballgame. You're flying on the edge of the performance of the aircraft, and proficiency is of utmost importance in this game. We're not talking about proficiency in general aviation flying. We're talking about proficiency in STOL, short takeoff and landing. It's a different form of proficiency. And this is what I think this is the message we're trying to get across to anybody in the audience over there that wants to get into STOL. Their proficiency we're going to talk about in this form.
What we have to realize, though, at the private pilot level, there's a lot of pilots here, we learn short takeoff and landing. It's a prerequisite. We learn soft field techniques. That's a prerequisite. What we're doing in competition is obviously the next level, but I'm a big believer that it all comes back to training for what we're going to be doing, and I couldn't agree with you more, Steve Z.
Well, what we're doing is a much higher level of short field takeoff and landing technique. I mean, the techniques that we use typically in the backcountry, or especially in STOL competition flying, is an extremely high level of flying technique. The techniques that you're taught as a student pilot is nothing compared to what we use in the real world of backcountry or STOL. And there's a big difference. There's a huge difference in where you think the envelope of the aircraft is and where it really is at the end of the day. So in STOL flying, when you're getting into competition STOL flying, if you don't know where the true edge of the envelope is of your aircraft, and you haven't explored that to the very, very edge and beyond that edge. What I'm saying is, when you go up and you practice STOLs, what do you do when you're in a flight school situation? You go up and practice STOLs. When you're doing a biennial flight review, what kind of STOL practice do you do? Anybody can put an aircraft into a STOL and recover from that STOL. But how many people can actually put it into a STOL and hold it fully stalled and land that aircraft? Can you do that? Are you comfortable stalling your aircraft 100 foot off the ground? Are you comfortable turning base to final and stalling your aircraft in a 60-degree bank turn? Are you comfortable with that? I know I am. If you're not comfortable with that, if you have a fear of stalling an aircraft close to the ground because you think that what's going to happen is you're going to die, at 500 foot or even 1,000 foot, if you're scared to stall that aircraft, you're scared of a stall spin accident. If you're scared of a stall spin accident, then I'm telling you right now that you're not ready to get into stall flying. You're not safe enough to start doing low and slow flying. That's the bottom line.
It's amazing when we give BFRCC how many people haven't stalled their aircraft since their last BFR. It's amazing when you get somebody that's never done a fall and leaf stall. You guys, you fly around, you need to understand what MCA is, minimum controllable airspeed. You get that through practice, and you get that through training.
You know, when we're talking about proficiency and install, we're not, I mean, for me, for instance, I go up at least once a week in my experimental aircraft, and I practice stalls and slow flight and short field landings. And often people say to me, what am I doing? I mean, I do this every week. I train, I teach people how to do this stuff every week. Yet when I'm by myself, I go up and I do the same thing. Aren't I good enough? No, I'm not. I do not believe that I am proficient enough at any time whatsoever. Even when I think I'm really, I'm tuned up and I'm really good, I'm at a stall competition and I think, right, you know, this is it, I still don't feel that I'm 100%. And I practice every single week. And I find it hard to believe that people only practice slow flight and stalls once every 2 years for a flight review. And of course we know that the FAA have changed that.
100%. Let's talk about training for this and how we do training and how that goes in. Here's a cool shot of actually stalling the aircraft up here at high elevation over one of the reservoirs of Lake Tahoe. But Mike, Mark, Richard, anybody else, I'd like to hear some training discussion.
Yeah, I'd actually like to touch on this. Just specifically, you mentioned you're up high elevation practicing some stalls. It's really important. So many do training where they live at 1,000 feet, at 2,000 feet, and they go out and do it a nice cool morning because nobody likes the hot of the middle of the day. And I'm going to tell you, I can't even count how many times I've had the pleasure of having maybe some of you out there, but friends have come out to Utah to fly with us and say, we want to go fly where you fly, and we kind of talk through their proficiency before we go up. We pre-flight every time we're going up with somebody new we haven't flown with. And we start asking them the questions about density, altitude, and airspeeds, and when's the last time they stalled the plane, what was the temperature, where were they, where do they live? And I have yet to have found somebody that came out from flatland that truly understood what happens at high and hot. They understand it, what they learned in class through training. They theoretically understand it, and they can read through the textbook. And then when we really talk about it, they don't understand the power curve loss mixed with the density, altitude, thin air loss, mixed with the inefficiency of the wing, and the perception of their speed that they have ingrained in their brain. They know it's high and hot, I'll have to go a little faster. It's sometimes a huge, giant, monumental difference. Like my plane, and this is a quote, "Oh, I will go on that strip with you. My plane never takes off in any less than 300 feet, fully loaded, full of gear, full of everything, no matter what, I'm good to go into this 1,000-footer. That very pilot, we emptied his plane, we took out his passenger at great resistance would be the right word. We said, no, we're not going to let you do it. We pulled his passenger, we loaded up another aircraft. This person took off on a 1,000-foot strip, really frustrated that we unloaded him. And on a 1,000-foot strip, he drug his tires through the trees and it tucked him twice at the other end of a 1,000-foot strip. And this was a pilot with 10,000 hours and a ton of time in his plane down low. And so there's not just proficiency and training where you live, it's actually accepting the fact that there's stuff you may not know that you don't know. And Cece even mentioned it in the back This high and hot can be really, really risky. So get proficient and then really respect that density altitude. And when you get to that favorite trip of yours up in the high and hot region and you're going to try it, boy, baby step on a 2,000 footer and work your way up, but be proficient and trained.
Mark, Richard, you got something on that?
Well, yeah, it's you know, we're twins, so it's more of the same, really. But surprise. Mike's right. We pre-flight pilots before we fly with them, and arguably more thorough than an airplane is pre-flown, right? We really pre-flight them. And the simple questions are this, and I'm asking all of you this question just to look inside introspectively, but we'll ask, when was the last time you stalled your airplane, like Mike said, and then we'll ask, what weight was it at? And they don't know the answer. That's a big question, right? Well, my plane stalls at this, that's great. What was your weight when you did that? I don't know. What was the temperature when you did that? I don't know. What altitude when you did that? Oh, it's about 2,000 feet AGL. Okay, well, what is that? And then when it gets really difficult, when you ask the other simple questions, when was the last time you stalled your airplane in a 45-degree bank? And they just look at you with big eyeballs, like they're trying on eyeballs for the first time, just blink, blink, blink. I don't even know what to say, right? Or a 60-degree bank. Just absolute deer in the headlights. And we go, okay, well, we're going to rethink about the strips we're going to play in today. We got some tight corners at high altitude without an out, and that's not one we're going into today. And it's not an attack on them, but if they don't know, they failed the pre-flight for certain airstrips.
So, I thought CC made a good point in the distinction between STOL flying and backcountry flying. I think STOL can be really helpful in building the skills to go fly in the backcountry. I've flown in the backcountry quite a bit in some of the most demanding strips in Idaho and Montana. I can perform the Super Cub to the max of its capabilities, but I rarely actually need to do it in the backcountry. And what I see is people will go back into the strips thinking, for example, they have to hit square one when they got 3,000 feet of runway in front of them, and they end up landing short or something to that effect. So I think you have to build the skill to be able to do that. I think, and the STOL can help you do that. I think when you get in the backcountry, the biggest thing I see people is judgment. Is the judgment to understand how their airplane is going to perform in density altitude situations, and judgment assessing their skills against the environment they're going up to today. That's the big issue I see.
The human factor is something that we all struggle with trying to figure out how to train. And that obviously is the psychological aspect, which we talked about at the beginning, but that's a big one.
And judgment of the winds and the weather there in the backcountry is a huge point.
Yeah. Austin, how about you talking about safety training?
The safety and training, I do mainly just STOL competitions, but I go into backcountry sometimes, and it's just amazing. It shocks me. I'm from Kansas, low flat land, and it just amazes me. My Husky does great down low, and then it blows me away that I only get 19 inches of manifold pressure trying to take off at a 5,000 foot strip at Johnson Creek, and it blows you away, and you really got to practice that. What all these guys said is 100% on.
And you're a new jet pilot. Guy flies a Stearman like nobody. He flies his Husky like nobody. He's a 19-year-old kid that's a phenom that's got almost 3,000 hours, that is fortunate with the family that he lives in. But the idea really is that you fly every day and you train every day for proficiency. 100%. Steve?
Well, one thing that's got brought up a couple times is today. How is it today? I don't do it as much as I used to. I used to go all the time out in the Waihees, about 40 miles, 40, 50, 60 miles from my place, and I find all these weird hilltops and little ridges to land on. I mean, sometimes I'll fly around a half an hour just to get my nerve up and just check it out before I would even land it. There's all kinds of places like that. And I might do it one day and be out there the very next day, and it's like, I'm not doing it today. I just don't quite feel quite as good. I don't like the way the air feels. It might not even be just the way it's blowing or the direction it's blowing, just the way it feels.
But so how do you develop that feeling? How do you develop that skill?
A lot of flying and
proficiency.
A lot of practice. Proficiency. Always have goals. I think always have goals. When you land, even if you land on a great big airport, kind of pick out a spot. where you want to land. How do I want to do this landing? I don't like to get in a rut either. I don't always land the same at all. I like to do different things, even if it's the same place, do different things, land different ways. It just kind of makes me feel like I'm more ready for whatever might come up.
Doug, you're flying in the you're flying over here at Twilight Fest each night, which is tonight at 8 o'clock. I encourage you to come over and check that out. But Doug, you're coming here to fly at Twilight Fest. John, you have Arkansas, which is a fantastic event. Talk to us a little bit about just training for even coming here, Doug.
Yeah, you know, you come into a new environment like this, and I've watched this for years, but to come get in that situation and come around those trees, or even taking off to the north here, you know, on Monday night, I think it was, we were taking off north, and it was dead air, and even in my airplanes, the performance I have, those trees start coming at you, and everyone has that impulse just to pull. The worst thing you can ever do, you know, but it's so ingrained in us to pull when we see something in front of us, you know, dodge it. And sometimes you just have to aim for it, you know, and get that speed up and keep that ground effect going. That's one of the things that we see with new guys as we get them in one of these competitions. We'll take them out the day before. I've asked Steve and Hal and some of these guys to mentor these guys. You know, get out there and watch them. And that's one of the things that we're really trying to do now is, even though I want the newcomer to come in, you know, and it doesn't take the formal training that your organization does, because y'all are doing something different. Even though we're just doing takeoffs and landings, you still got to get that guy out there and see if he's capable. And sometimes you have to make that hard call. So, you know, this is just not quite, you're not quite ready yet, you know. Yeah.
It's funny, Mike, you and I were just talking yesterday about the pullback effect. Training somebody, and next thing you know, he's pulling back.
Yeah, I lost a flight instructor to that, and I also almost lost myself and my family to that very situation. I had a co-pilot in one seat that needed to. I think he had 400 hours, but he had more time in a particular aircraft that I was flying, and I was flying for insurance, and I had, I don't know, maybe 5,000 hours at the time. And so he was kind of along for the ride. We'd flown over and over and over and checking off the hours of 2 pilots till I could fly my big twin without him. We came in to land, it got windy and gusty, and he grabbed the yoke and started panicking, and all of a sudden I felt the yoke come all the way back, and I'm like, my aircraft, and he pulled, and I grabbed it and I pushed back and said, my aircraft. And he goes, oh no, we're gonna hit. And we were ways away. He panicked again, and then he reached for the throttle. Pause for effect. And then right at that moment, lights were on, nobody was home. He grabbed the yoke and my full bank and pulled both back to his chest. And my plane went straight into a stall about 100 feet from the ground. And I put my hand on his hand and pushed as hard as I could, trying to get that nose back over. I was not overpowering his pull, and unfortunately, it's the only time I've ever hit somebody in an airplane as hard as I could, and I black and blued both his eyes, but we would have died that day. Yeah. Power at idle, plane up, full stall. The bottom line is, you don't always know how you're going to react or when your brain is going to freeze up. So maybe you don't have enough RAM going on that day, and it just like, I don't know what to do. And I was fortunate enough to get down, and the pilot was fortunate enough to later thank me, and he recognized what had happened when he realized that I was pushing on his hand as hard as I could, trying to get the throttle back. But in the backcountry, that same event happens if you haven't trained, because if a sensation occurs really high, you have time to go, oh wait, whoa, let me fix that. But when that sensation occurs, when the tree line's right there, or the end of the runway's right there, or that gust hits you funny, and you haven't been through that sensation,
know, we all like to believe we're gonna
Do it right.
do it right. Like, we all want to believe that. But when that moment happens, if you haven't done it, you really don't know how you're gonna react when the plane does something you didn't expect, really high and hot and really close to the ground. And we're losing too many pilots this way, and so that's the point of this forum. We don't want to lose anymore.
Training for proficiency. CC had something?
We're right where we should be here, discussing this exact thing. Are we going to get credits for that?
Over, man, you're on. The F-35s were supposed to fly 30 minutes ago.
So I want to talk about this. What we're talking about right now is exactly where we are. Proficiency in practicing exactly what you should do at that time without thinking about it. Now, you know, in flight school, when you're practicing stalls, or you're doing stalls with a flight instructor for a flight review, you're at 2,000-3,000 foot in the air. So who cares if you lose 200-300 foot? Have you ever noticed when you're practicing stalls how much altitude you lose? No, when you that's not real. That's not real world. That's not realistic. When anybody can stall an aircraft and recover from a stall, but losing 200 foot is not going to help you when you're 200 foot above the ground coming into land. And that's when you need to be proficient in this. So practicing doing the right thing. Doing the right thing. When you see trees coming up, doing the right thing. Practicing obstacle clearance takeoffs.
You gotta love Oshkosh. I mean, that's how we're here.
Yeah!
You know, it's kind of funny. They put the backcountry STOL pilots, we're like the redheaded stepchilds of the industry. But that's honestly why we need to be serious and show that we aren't the redheaded stepchild. And even if we are, we take it very serious. We take it serious. We tell everybody else how serious and how important this is, because we are out there doing our thing in the backcountry, having fun. We are making competition. We're our fingers of general aviation right now, pushing folks to get out there to go fly and realize there's a lot more than the $100 hamburger. And if that's all you do, that's fantastic. John, you have an awesome event down there in Arkansas.
Well, I appreciate that, and I kind of want to draw attention a little bit to
Here comes again.
jet that's coming down. One of the videos that you guys played on the intro looked like a pretty boring video of a guy, you know, stalling an airplane. And that was actually my airplane and one of our co-founders, Rusty Coonfield, that was taking a guy up that is a former Thunderbird, just like Richard here. He was more recent, a little bit, but a little younger than you. But he...
so he was only a year ago. I was about 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Exactly. But so we were taking him up, and proficiency in the aircraft you're flying and the type of flying you're doing, we were taking him up and getting him familiar with what that Husky did on that particular day, what the stall speeds were on, power off, flaps, no flaps, and getting him prepared for that first intro landing in the backcountry. And the comments he had coming out of that, number one, he had a blast, which is good, that's what we want, right? But he came out of it knowing that he needed to, at his skill level, to still progress to a point to where that type of flying was achievable.
I can agree more.
We want to roll on to the 3 different types of STOL type competitions are found around the country today, or you want to hit on that helmet there?
Well, real quick, as we transition into some competition flying and off airport flying and just flying in general, there's a lot of helmet companies out there. This is my choice right here, Sky Cowboy. They make a great helmet. It's comfortable for our type of aircraft, and it's just really my shout out, but really the segue to this is that when we train, we want to be safe. You got to protect your melon. Odds are we're going to probably go in at a low rate of impact, a low rate of speed with that impact, but this is going to save your melon when you think about the cabin right over the top of you. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people flipped over upside down, and it's not a good outcome. But I'm not wearing my Sky Cowboy helmet every day, and there's a lot of others out there that I encourage you to go try on, because maybe that's the one that fits you best. But what Jonathan's making over there, it's an affordable helmet. You put your Bose Lightspeed in, and this isn't a sponsor plug. my buddy, I want to give him a shout out for the sake that we all, I think a lot of us are wearing this helmet. And let's talk about the competition here. Doug, I'd like to hear from you about National STOL.
Yeah, so, you know, I tell everybody what we do, we're just taking off and landing, right? But to CC's point is we're taking that to the very extreme. And, you know, I want to back up just a little bit. We talk about proficiency. When we talk about proficiency, you know, that doesn't ring with everybody, but what we're trying to tell you is when that moment comes, if it's not muscle memory, you're not going to do it. We can sit up here and talk to you. We can take you flying. You know, we can show you how to do this, but if you don't go out and when the rubber meets the road, if it's not muscle memory, if you have to think about it, it's too late.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah. It's got to just be ingrained in you. And that's one of the things that I never get in an aircraft. I don't care what it is. It can be a citation. First thing I want to do is I want to go out and see what it stalls. I want to see what it feels like. But if you don't know what it's going to feel like when that impending stall is coming, then you're not going to know how to react.
But real quick, what does a National STOL competition consist of?
Yeah, so National STOL, we started out as just a single event in Texas about 3 years ago. We called it Lone Star STOL. We had about 80 guys sign up. Unfortunately, had some terrible weather. Most of these guys made it. Some of them didn't. Had about 40 get there, and that progressed into National STOL. We decided to turn it into a series. And that first year we had COVID, and we only had a couple events. And then the next year we had 5, I think it was. This year we had 9 scheduled. I think we'll end up having 7. And we try to get all over the country. And the thing that makes me smile the most is to see a new guy come out that thinks he can't do this in his Cub or his 172 or a Comanche 260. We've got a phenom guy that come out and just really blew it away with his Comanche down in Florida. But that's what makes me smile. Now, that being said, we've got to make sure he's up to it that day like we talked about. And then we've got this new class that we started this year that I'm really proud of. It's an LSA class, 108 horsepower less and no flaps. And that is pure competition. You know, you get to see these guys go out there and just kill it. And we've got a young guy, he may be here today, that brought a Legend Cub out last year and just had a blast. Had to talk him into competing, but that's what I like. And that's because this instills an amount of confidence in you that you really don't realize you have. You know, everybody can learn how to do a short takeoff. Everybody can learn how to do a short landing. But when you can hit that line, let's face it, the takeoff's easy. But to be able to hit that line and get stopped and realize that you've accomplished something that you didn't think you were able to do, that's where I want this to go. And that's kind of my vision.
So National STOL is basically traditional STOL where they're measuring the distance of your takeoff and the distance of your landing, adding those 2 distances up and getting a score. The lowest score wins, right?
Exactly. And if you come to watch this tonight, you'll see this in action. We'll have, for instance, a 100-foot landing and or Steve, 10-foot takeoff and landing, and we add those 2 scores together. So if you got a 100-foot landing, 100-foot takeoff, 100-foot landing, your score is 200. And it's very simple format.
Then along came Kevin Quinn, decided to spice it up one evening at one of our High Sierra fly-ins, and he created a thing called STOL drag racing. And what's that like, Kevin?
Well, I think everybody knows what STOL drag is, but just real quick because I want to hear more from these guys. But really, we've taken traditional STOL, and now we race down a track 2,000 feet to a complete stop on the far end, on heading, and back. The big thing that I'm passionate about, as you can tell, is the power and energy management, the altitude directional control, the spot landing, the psychological element that all goes into this, which when you leave STOL drag training, doesn't guarantee that you're actually going to get to be part of the landing and takeoff competition. You're going to leave that and it's going to go back home with you. It's going to resonate inside of you for the rest of the year. And all those skills that you learned, again, the power and energy management, the directional and altitude control, the spot landing, the psychological aspect, which you talked about earlier, you're going to take that back to your home flying. So now STOL drag events, we race at Reno. We're the first new class since the jet class 20 years ago. We should race here in September. High Sierra Flying is our world championship. We got 2 world champions sitting up here, Steve Henry and Mike Patey, and Mark Patey. Excuse me as I think about that.
That's right.
World champions. I didn't even look at you. I knew that was that. But STOL drag in itself, my mission is to train pilots in those skills that I just talked about. And that's really STOL drag in a nutshell.
I want to give a shout out to Kevin, because one thing about STOL drag that I never imagined, and Kevin, I've never told you this. I always practice for short takeoff and landing, and you're hanging it on a prop and you're trying to hit a spot. And if the wind's moving around, that can get pretty risky. You can really get yourself dead in a hurry, but that's what you thought. Come in slow, just hit the line and done. The first year I did STOL drag, it was a great time, I did okay. The next year I really practiced full speed, deep slips, and then hitting a spot at a minimum speed and getting stopped. And 2017, like I said, I was fortunate enough to win. But that year, the thing I never thought I'd imagine is my whole flying changed because of STOL drag. Because I used to go up in the mountains where you got winds and rollers and things moving around, and I'd come in slow to hit that line because I've only got 100 feet to get stopped. After racing in STOL drag, I get up in the mountains, the wind's moving around, I come in fairly quick. I come in with lots of extra speed, lots of extra safety margin, because I can know I go, whoop, bam, right? That's the skill set that will keep people alive. And I don't think people realize, and I don't know that you designed it to do that, but if we can carry more speed into the backcountry and can manipulate that plane to just stop it real quick right before we hit the ground and hit our spot, we got people that are going to survive. They're no longer going to be doing those long, slow approaches that got everyone up here sitting on the edge of the street, pucker factor, while someone's doing this and still 500 feet.
That is STOL drag, Steve Austin.
100%. I believe. So for national STOL, I believe it like sets you up perfect to hit a spot. Know your airplane, know your limits, fly in front of a crowd. That's the big thing. Then you go to STOL drag, and it's completely different. You're just you're not flying behind the power curve. You're still flying in front of a crowd, but you're still trying to hit spots, and you're racing against each other. So it teaches you that. And then you go to arc and STOL, and then you put all those together. So you're landing on different runways. You're using the power energy management, going fast, deep slips, just going good.
That's a great segue to Steve, John, and arc and STOL. And what you guys have going on down there is really taken from traditional to drag to now what you're doing there, the training that you need for that. Talk about that stuff.
Yeah, so, well, he did a great job describing it, you know, so I'm good. I'm good. No, I mean, arc and STOL started as an idea about 3 years ago around a campfire, you know, where a lot of ideas start in our business. And it gradually progressed, and we're very lucky to have a venue called Birds Adventure Center in Northwest Arkansas, which I think runway for runway has some of the most challenging, you know, backcountry strips in the U.S., very unknown, without the density altitude. So that's to our benefit. So Birds has this whole adventure center on 800 acres and many runways that the owners developed over the years, and we started flying these runways, right? And started landing on them, and you know, depending on the airplane, it's 1,900 feet to 400 feet. Kit foxes can go in there and stuff like that. We picked out a few runways and said, wouldn't it be cool if people would come in and experience what we experience, and we developed arc and STOL. It has evolved over 3 years, and this year we're changing it up quite a bit from being a strictly timed event to a timed and precision event. So it's really where speed meets precision. And the thing about it that's very interesting is that you are making a lot of decisions very quickly. And it's a lot of strategy as you go into it. You know, how far down that runway do I need to land and still be able to turn around and safely take off? Those are things you need to take into account. What is the density altitude that day? What's the weight on the airplane? These are all things that you use in the backcountry. We're just kind of compressing it a little bit. And so far, so good.
Thanks, John. Steve? You won arc and STOL?
Yeah, I did. The first year they had arc and STOL, I made it to it, and I did wind up winning it, and I loved it. It's like they say, it's different things kind of put together. It's unique. The different runways, the going fast. I love going fast. I love going slow. That's what STOL drag's so fun about. It's you're going fast, you're going slow. It's the intensity. Being in a competition just kind of adds another something to it that you know. I mean, you know, you're not just out there flying now. It's a competition. There's something different about it that kind of puts pressure on you. You know, you want to do your best, but What I always tell myself is just fly like I fly. I tell people, don't try to do anything new at a competition. Don't even try to get better at a competition. Get better in your practice. Go out there and do a lot of practice and get better there. Then go to the competition and fly like you fly. Get that muscle memory, get used to your airplane, know your limits. And I mean, you can get in a competition without a lot of practice, but just have realistic expectations. Don't think you're going to go win it. Don't even try to go win it. Just go experience it, but don't push it.
And that's a great segue to how we get started in off-airport flying, in backcountry flying, in competitions. Richard, Austin, Mike?
You know, I want to elaborate on what Steve said. He's absolutely spot on. So I just want to bring it up another way, and maybe it can sink in with some of you that fly with groups. There's something that happens on the psychological side when there are peers, and that can be in a competition with the best out here. It can be with your best friends in planes out at a field you land at all the time. And the psychological aspect gets people in trouble a lot. It really does. They feel like they did so good on all this practice, now someone's watching, they're going to do just a little more. And that, and Steve, you hit it right on the head, that is when people get hurt. They go one step beyond because there's a crowd, a camera, or their peers. And I'm going to go one step further. We started to see that out in the backcountry. And we got together as a group. Most of the people here, some of them weren't in that, but this is a perfect group to do it. And we said, guys, we need to start doing something different. And that is encouraging the guys that are not feeling comfortable about a strip to not do it, and applaud them for circling like a buzzard overhead. It was always rough for me before I built Draco. I loved my Wilga, but I'd go flying with my buddies and I was the buzzard overhead when it was just a traditional Wilga.
Come on down, Mike. No.
Yeah, and I just would circle and it was just like, dang it, I want to go down there, but I didn't. And then later, you know, I built Draco and we're all landing. And I remember the first time watching another one of our friends that flew in from out of town and wanted to land on this hilltop called Not For You. There's a reason for that hilltop called Not For You. It will always be named that. And he circled with a very capable plane. This plane could have done it. And he circled a couple times and he radioed down and said, guys, I'm not feeling it. Hang out as long as you want. I got plenty of fuel. I'm going to just circle around till you're ready. And you know what? Everybody in our group was like, yes, that is awesome. Nobody said, come on, you can do it. It was the opposite. It was an immediate mic back up. Great call, great decision making. We're going to pack up right now and go find another place we can all land together and hang out. Like, that needs to be the new emphasis. The focus is on don't push it, don't take it too far, and don't encourage anyone else. And most importantly, look into yourself, and if there's any little thing that is saying don't do it, just don't do it. I learned the hard way and I totaled the plane because of it. There were things to me that said don't do this, and I totaled my favorite aircraft of all time.
Mentorship is something that's really, really big, and all of us are flying with folks, and those of you that you know who you are, you know that you're the experienced one in that group. Mentorship is something that's so important, and the peer pressure that the other people that are in that group flying with you feel, you don't know what that's like until looking back in yourself and remember when you were that person. And the mentorship, that's a responsibility that we have in the off-airport arena, in the traffic pattern at your home airport, at competitions. It's a big deal. And I really want to get to some questions because we've got about 20 minutes left, but I'd like to know, AOPA has a lot of great things that you can find for resources in training, safety, how to get started, and maybe Richard, you can elaborate on that as Juan and I go into the crowd here so we can ask some of these guys some questions. And when we go into questions, I just ask that, you know, all of us get sit up here and talk for hours on this stuff. This is a STOL backcountry off-airport competition. that kind of topic, and I asked that you don't ask Steve about Yeehaw and his builds, and everybody wants to know about Scrappy and what's the next product you're going to unveil. They're legends. I strive to be like them, and so Richard, give us some ideas about the training and whatnot that goes into APA, and we're going to go to some questions.
Thanks, Kevin. I think it starts at home, whether you want to get into STOL or whether you want to go fly the backcountry, it starts at home. AOPA, the Air Safety Institute, we have a 5-point model. We say if you take knowledgeable pilots, train them well, put them in proficient equipment, and surround them with a culture that encourages good decision making, then you're going to run safe operations. And I might have forgotten proficiency as the third bullet there. So we developed the Backcountry Safety Coalition. I mean a lot of people up on the stage came together and we said, you know what, we're tired of people watching videos and thinking this is easier than it is. So we developed this Backcountry Safety Coalition with the help of a lot of people on the stage. We're trying to hit across all 5 of those principles. So our website's a great place to start, Backcountry Safety Center on the AOPA website, and we'll funnel you out to a bunch of different places to find information.
How about we go, thank you for that, Richard, because you know what AOPA is doing, I'm a big believer, and there's a lot of education and knowledge there, and I encourage you to look into that.
Well,
Let's go to some questions.
I think you and all the YouTube people that have such a tremendous reach, and more you guys are putting safety messages in your YouTube. I heard you mention that yesterday, Mike, and that's such a powerful thing. And as a safety guy, I'm grateful to Kevin for doing it, for you guys for doing it. It's good stuff.
We got any questions? We got a question right here from this mister right here. Absolutely. Here you go.
Richard, is there anything AOPA can do to try to maybe come up with a training program that we could go through that may get us a reduced interest or reduced rates on our insurance that, you know, just like any other training that, you know, when you go, you buy a new airplane, they tell you to go get so many hours, you know, before they'll give you insurance, but I'll let Kevin.
Yeah, we do some work on that. In fact, I was out there with Mike and Kevin yesterday, and we were addressing a group of underwriters to help make sure they understand all that we're doing to help improve safety in the backcountry. We do have on the AOPA website a focused flight review specifically around backcountry flying. Maybe we can develop one for STOL flying. So I would offer that maybe we take that to our coalition and figure out if that's something we could develop that might be helpful to people and offer it.
It's a great idea. I got Jerry Clemens here from Clemens Insurance Agency. He's your insurance guy. He knows a thing or two about this.
So if you want to look for training for backcountry, what I would recommend, and what the insurance companies love
louder,
to see
Jerry,
training,
just a little louder.
Yeah, if you're looking for training for the backcountry, call CC. Because everyone knows who he is. The insurance companies know who he is. And if you want to go out and do something safe in the backcountry, get training from someone like CC.
Right.
More questions.
Questions. I got a question way back here, Juan. Come on up here real quick. What you got?
So just joining in on the gentleman's question right here, is there any thought of doing a chapter type scenario where you guys are the coalition, we set up, because I'm an East Coaster, so I don't know, I've heard all these different things about density altitude, but where we can come out, you guys can train us, and then we can go back to the East Coast and mentor all the people in our chapter about what you guys are teaching. Have you guys ever thought of something like that?
You know, I actually think that's a brilliant idea, and I would absolutely step first forward with anyone else if we can create something like that. The density altitude, quite frankly, a lot of it has to do with physics, and that's the world I love, to get into why things happen. Just like people taking their POH and they come out to high density altitude and they're like, oh, it looks like it's going to be like this, but what we're going to do isn't on my chart, so I'm going to keep drawing a line and assume that's correct. It's so unbelievably incorrect. There's something that happens when you cross over, you start to transition on the backside of your horsepower, the backside of your wing. That line doesn't move like it does in your book. It goes one way. And I'll give you a quick example, and I think we should do something like that so people understand you can't assume things about your book and what you can do in the backcountry. But using a Wilga, for example, stock Wilga, sea level, 200-foot takeoff. 4,000 feet, 400 feet foot takeoff. 8,000 feet, it went to 1,500 foot takeoff. Over 10,000 feet on a stock Wilga with 1 inch of grass. 2,800 feet takeoff roll. That curve does not move like that. And people think, I've flown at 2,000, I've flown at 4,000, I've flown at 6,000, I'm going to land at 10. And what they don't know is they go, and I'm going to double it for buffer. And they don't realize quad may not get you airborne on that hilltop on that day. And that's when we're seeing people take off, stall spin at the end, and we need to end it.
Got one over here, Kevin. Question for CC. Talk a little bit, if you would, about how you get people's personal minimums down from stalling at 3,000 feet. How do you walk them down to stalling in the hundreds?
Say it again.
How do you walk people from, training today, stalls are done at 3,000 as you noted, right? Now you're talking about getting to do stalls down at the couple hundred or 500 feet. How do you walk them down training-wise to get them comfortable there?
Well, first of all, we have to get out of that typical flight school type of training where it's a bit sloppy. When you're doing this kind of training at a couple of thousand feet in the air, you don't really care about how much altitude you're losing. So the first thing you need to learn to do is to, and practice this over and over again, is to practice stalling the aircraft and recovering with the least amount of altitude possible. 50 foot, that's my limit. If you can't, you have to be able to recover from a stall, a full stall, a power-on stall, within 50 foot. If you can't do that, you're not ready to start practicing short takeoff and landings. That's the bottom line.
To elaborate on that, CC, that nobody's encouraging anybody to stall their aircraft at 100
No,
feet.
not at all. Thank you. Not at all. Thank you.
No one is encouraging
Good clarification.
And I know CC's not.
No, let me just clarify. What we're not doing, what I'm trying to do is make you safe at operating that aircraft low to the ground in the event of a stall happening at 100 foot, that you are safe enough and proficient enough, this is the big word here, proficient enough to be able to recover that aircraft within that 100 foot from the ground and continue and land safely, and land that aircraft safely.
Yeah, we'll never take someone up. We'll never take someone up, and CC included, and take you to 3,000 and have you stall it and then say, now do 2, now do 1. What he was saying earlier, and that's a good clarification question, is that you are mentally prepared and instinctively responsive, fast enough to recover when you happen to do it at 100 feet, that you don't panic.
Right.
And
Never,
you don't pull.
You don't pull. That your instinct is to push, and I'd rather plow through a few trees than spin it in, because one of them you're going to walk away and the other one you won't.
Well, another big thing here is practicing doing the right thing at the right time. You don't have time to think about at 100 foot or 200 foot, 500 foot above the ground. If you stall that aircraft, you drop. It's not stalling the aircraft. It's not a big deal here. It's dropping a wing, and you should never have a wing drop when you stall an aircraft. If you're dropping a wing, you're uncoordinated. So that's another thing you have to practice. You have to practice being coordinated all the time. And if you're coordinated, you're not going to have a wing drop. You're going to have a stall, and the stall is not a big deal. But you have to practice this. You have to be proficient in stall recovery and wing drop recovery, low to the ground, and then you will become a safe stall pilot.
I want to emphasize the coordinated flight point on that. I think that's so important. Coordinated flight, being able to feel it and sense it. And just remember, the FAA requires you to recover above 1,500 feet. So,
there's just one other thing that I'd like to mention as well. In training, a bad thing that a lot of flight instructors put into the heads of their students is, up at 3,000 foot they say, okay, when you stall, you push the nose over, you push the stick forward, and you get speed and you recover. You can't do that when you're 100 or 200 foot above the ground. You don't put you put the stick forward to break your stall, you're going to fly the thing into the ground busy recovering from the stall. So there's the real world and there's that other world up there at 3,000 foot, and the two don't. The one that you practice at 3,000 foot, typically when you're doing normal student pilot, private pilot, even commercial pilot level training, and stall, when you're low to the ground, slow to the ground, coming into land, and you're on the tip of that stall, it's a different world altogether. You can't use that same technique that you learned at student pilot or private pilot level in STOL flying.
And that's what we
Whether
talked
it be the
about
backcountry
earlier.
or the STOL competition, it's a different thing altogether. The skills are much, just different skills altogether. You're flying on the edge. And another thing I just want to mention about the difference between backcountry and actual STOL competition flying. In a STOL competition, you're flying on the very, very edge. And one of the reasons is, well, first of all, we're in a competition. You're competitive. You want to do well. You want to win this thing. So you're not pushing it. And by the way, you never push. I teach my students, you never push the envelope. That's the worst thing you can ever do. Never push the envelope. If you're pushing the envelope of your aircraft at any time when you're taking off towards trees or you're coming into land for a STOL contest or in the backcountry, if you're ever pushing the envelope, then that means one simple thing. You have never explored the envelope of your aircraft. You don't push it, you explore the envelope so that you can become hand in glove and proficient and safe with that aircraft low to the ground, because then you don't have to push the envelope. Pushing the envelope simply means you don't know where the limit is and you're pushing it, and sooner or later you're going to find out where it is, and when you find out where it is low to the ground and you're not proficient, a stall spin is going to happen. That's what we want to prevent.
And that's exactly what we're talking about. You have to train for proficiency. Don't be satisfied with currency. Somebody got a question in here? Anybody? Question? What you got, Juan?
How do you safely manage fuel, especially in the STOL competitions where it seems to be all about minimums? And I ask from the perspective of spectators who are watching people drain fuel out of their wings, hoping to ourselves compete someday.
I think that's a little bit off topic right now, but in a STOL contest, we still have to be within the legal limits unless it's an FAA waiver. I know that if you speak to Kevin can tell you that in the STOL drag events, we actually can go below minimums that will be legal. We have an FAA waiver for that, but I'm not going to get into that. I think that's another. We're not really talking about the fuel situation here. Although, yeah, if you're in a STOL contest, you don't run out of fuel. But I think the main thing we're trying to get across over here is safety. When you're getting into STOL, whether it be a competition level STOL or backcountry STOL, is being safe and learning how to do it properly and safely. And proficiency is the key here. Being proficient. Don't have a fear of your aircraft. You need to know your aircraft. It's very important before you even get into STOL, to practice this sort of stuff at high altitude, 3,000 foot up in the air. You need to record the numbers. You need to STOL the aircraft, different configurations of flap and power setting. You need to record the indicated airspeeds during those different STOLs. And you need to know how to handle that aircraft. You need to be hand in glove with that aircraft at all times. And when something does happen, like a wing drop, that you don't have to think about what to do. It is instinct immediately. The first action must be the right action, otherwise you're done.
And again, as a broken record, training for proficiency, we all know that an aircraft stalls at the same angle of attack, but it stalls at different configurations, different weight configurations, etc., flap settings, you name it. We got a question, Juan.
I'm Neil Culliner, new Cub Crafters FX3 owner. Thanks, Brad and Cub Crafters.
A little louder for us, please.
I'm a new Cub Crafters FX3 owner, and thanks Cub Crafters for an outstanding plane. I'm in Virginia. I'm a former A-10 guy, and I want to thank all the YouTubers that have been great mentors that got me back into flying after years of not flying. But my concern now is a lot of the mentorship that we had 2 years ago seems to have gone away. Kevin's still doing great training, and I love watching and learning from that. And what I challenge all of you all is to continue helping us in the community and realize that we're watching and learning from you all. So, like I said, it seems like a lot of that STOL training and experience is kind of fading, and I'm worried that that could affect the general aviation community. And obviously we're all interested, but so I just put out to you all to please keep the content coming, realize we're watching and learning from you all, and please keep helping us learn.
Thank you. That's a responsibility that I think is very, very important, that we are all trying, as we said earlier, the mentorship and really trying to portray just that it's important. It's really, really important, and we don't take, I didn't ask to be an influencer. I just started putting pictures out there, and one thing led to another, and it caught on because it was an attention getter. And I know every one of these guys went out there and we start posting pictures, and well, just because of who they are, any single one of these guys can post a picture out there. You want to follow them because they're the best of the best in at what they're doing, and we have a responsibility to protect what we're doing. And those youngsters that are out there, I hate social media. I think it's the cesspool of the internet. However, social media in particular is a great way. You have to embrace technology. It's a great way to reach a large audience and showcase what we're doing, because it's the largest growing sector in aviation. I don't care what it is. You go by the Lamborghini, which is the Cub Crafters. You go by the Legend. You go by the Aviat, the Kit Fox, the Just. They're all phenomenal companies, but there's a 2-year wait list. That tells something right there. People want to get out and go experience all of this. And I'm a big believer that what all of you are doing and posting and all of the above, my wife says, what are you doing? I'm just posting a picture. Hold on, honey. Well, that's all it is to continue inspiring, and I'm so passionate about the opportunity to train and take people beyond proficiency. That's what it's really about, and I challenge each and every one of you as a mentor, do that to the people that are in your flying group. Question?
All right, great. Yeah, not really a question, but thanks everyone for being here. This is an explosive time period for aviation for particular reasons. Now, I sat here and this is awesome, and everyone just had phenomenal, and I'm not a great pilot, I'm not a STOL pilot, but I spent about close to 20 years in backcountry recreation at a pretty high level, and I don't know Kevin, but I know of his background, and just so everyone here knows what Kevin's bringing and the whole advent of STOL and drag comes from an incredible amount of experience in backcountry travel, particularly with clients. His career in avalanche education translates 100% to what he's trying to do in aviation, and this is such a big culture change in aviation, and it's going to make aviation better and safer, but at the same time it's a double-edged sword, because the social media aspect, as you just alluded to, it's a slippery slope. And the one gentleman who had a comment on doing a chapter thing with local mentorship, you know, that too in itself, you know, is that just gives me goosebumps, because right now everything it might be 2 years for new Cub Crafters, but you know, we're going to be slowly into an era where we have, you know, the Bonanza, V-tail, Dr. Killer, or the early days of the Cirrus, because it is so awesome, it is so accessible, and people know it and they want it, and it's awesome. But we have to be very, very careful here. The more that we become, you know, a mainstream sport, if you will, and I think, you know, Richard and everyone up here, thank you guys, but we got to figure out how to formalize, and the human factors in decision making that's what this is all about.
I want to thank you for bringing that up and addressing that, because STOL is so good for general aviation. I think it's bringing some excitement, it's bringing new people, all that's good, and all that can go away if we don't bring it in safely and teach people to do it safely, and we bang up airplanes and we hurt people. That's going to be damaging to GA, not good for GA. So that's why we have both reasons are why we have a keen interest in it. We love the growth and the demographics it brings in. We want to help keep it safe. And I want to thank Kevin Quinn for your leadership on that, pulling this panel together and all that you're doing for that.